Hello and welcome, independent researchers, skeptics, and all of humankind, to Shadow Citizen.
Welcome to episode 3. This week's guest will be Chris Emery, and you can hear us live and chat with us at mixlr.com/Shadow Citizen. We're also simulcast and rebroadcast over at radioconfluence.com, and from there you can take us with you on TuneIn and Zeno Live. But check out our main page, which is shadowcitizen.online, and you can see our upcoming guest. And let's see. We've been having Skype problems, so we're going to see if we can get that to work now. My name is Rob O'Sell, and my co-host is...
I'm Rachel L. McIntosh. So I'm really excited about this show because our guest today is Chris Emery. And Chris Emery, he's the producer of a lot of really awesome documentaries, one of which I showed at my library 3 times. And got really good response from. The movie that I'm talking about is called A Noble Lie. He's also been involved with the production of Shadow Ring, which was the film that our last guest last week, James Perloff, was involved with based on his book, Shadows of Power. I'd like to introduce him. Is he here to talk to us?
Well, I tried. It shows that he's back online, but right now he is kind of disappeared from my... my Skype list here, so
oh no, we're having a technical
there it
difficulty.
is. So let's try this again. Add to call.
But regardless, I am super excited to have him on because that movie, A Noble Lie, was so interesting because when I showed it at the library, there was a woman in the audience who wasn't really prepared for what she was going to see. She had a little pin on that had a picture of her friend who had died in Iraq as a soldier. And she watched the whole film. And at the very end of the film, you could tell she was really, really shaken. And she said, and I don't know why she jumped right into this, but she said, do you mean to tell me my friend, and she showed her pin, she said, my friend died for no reason? And I said, I didn't know what to say. So she just started crying. And I didn't know what else to do but to give her a hug. Yeah, that's how powerful this film is. This Noble Lie film is.
It really is.
And it's about the Oklahoma City bombing.
Let's chat.
Yes.
Okay, Chris is here. Wow.
Oh, yay, Chris is here. Yay. Come on up. Right on, Chris. Thanks for showing up.
Well, I'm sorry about that. I had to reboot and then the internet crashed, so sometimes that happens when we start these interviews.
Right.
So anyway, thank you for inviting me on. It's quite an honor to be here.
You're more than welcome. Why don't you give us the background on you, because I tried to kind of fill in some blank spaces and I just started rambling. So you tell us what you want.
Well, I don't want to be repetitive, so you read the bio? And that pretty much encapsulates it. This is my 36th year in radio, television, and film, and actually got into the production side of the film business about 16 years ago.
Okay.
And, in 1998, so we're looking at 18 years ago, and did small biographical documentaries, training videos, industrial videos for those in the film industry that different companies use those for training. Insurance companies, whatever. And then the opportunity came up to work on I was doing research on the downing of flight TWA 800. I'm not going to, that's another interview for another day, guys. But what was really shocking about that was after 2.5 years of research and consulting with retired military and James Sanders, whose wife was a former flight attendant. And at the time I was dating a flight attendant with the TWA.
That made it more personal, really.
Exactly. Yeah, in a lot of ways, because her job. I bet. Her job was actually threatened when I carried on and was asking questions, and come to find out, it was just a catastrophic accident on the part of the U.S. Navy. They accidentally shot the flight down and did everything they could to cover it up. Now, the higher ups did. There were a lot of, like I said, retired and middle ranking officers that refused to lie about it, and they were put in their place or had their pension and their careers threatened. So anyway, I was asked to step away from that by at the time family member's supervisor, and with TWA, and so about a month later the case of Oklahoma City dropped in my lap, and I was very reticent on taking it on because at the time I believed the official narrative. I had no reason not to. But my litmus test is I give myself 6 months or $6,000, whatever I burn through first. And if I can't find anything that supports the official narrative on the story, then it's time to sit down and hunker down and clear the table and figure out an outline of, okay, what supports the narrative and what doesn't. And with Oklahoma City, the only thing we found that was true was that, yes, 168 people were brutally murdered, including 3 unborn children. And that was it. The official narrative, you couldn't hold up legally, scientifically, ethically. So we were in at a crossroads to move forward, on our self-funding the film. Go ahead.
I want to bust in right here because this is one of the things that always gets to me. People always say, oh, the government wouldn't do that to their own people. And you have to realize just how ruthless these people are because, wasn't it in that film that, certain people didn't bring their kids into daycare that day and,
Correct.
And
Correct.
Other people, lost their children because they could have just said, oh, there's a malfunction, and so don't bring your kids in, daycare won't be allowed to open. But it's like they almost want these child sacrifices because it really gets the public mad that children, innocent children died also. So I just
no, that's okay. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to throw that in and comment on that if you would.
That's
can we back up and just explain to people who might not be familiar with the Oklahoma City bombing, just give an overview of what that is and why we're getting all up in arms about it. So
yes, a good question, because here we are, we'll do the math, coming up on 30 years, 31 years.
Mm-hmm,
wow,
mm-hmm.
That's 21 years.
Right,
so
right.
22 years now. Okay. What we have is it's the Alfred P. Murrah building was a federal building in downtown Oklahoma City, April 19, 1995. It was a Wednesday morning. There was an ANFO truck bomb in a 24-foot Ryder truck, moving truck, that was pulled up in front of the Murrah building. It detonated at 2 minutes after 9 and destroyed the building and killed 168 people. 160 that day. 8 had survived the blast initially, but died of the fatality or the mortal wounds within about 2 weeks after that. And so the official narrative was that they had a disgruntled GI, Timothy McVeigh, that lit this fuse of like an Acme, and I'm not being trite here, folks, I'm not being disrespectful, but if you can liken it to the Acme bomb on a Wile E. Coyote and a Roadrunner cartoon, that's really how the narrative held up. It was completely foolish and completely irresponsible. And they claimed that he lit this truck bomb and walked away and watched the building blow up. Well, it didn't happen like that. And like I said, we tried to find anything that would support that. Eyewitness testimony from the local, county, state, federal law enforcement, retired military that did after-action reports and had to debrief the search and rescue and the canine crews and then search and recovery crews. They weren't coming up with anything that made sense there. The photographs, the video footage that was given to us by the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department. I mean, it was just a cacophony of not only eyewitness and ear-witness testimony, but the photos and, all the way from the video footage shot in the building all the way to helicopter footage. So it took us 8.5 years to put this film together.
My gosh.
We had a lot of pushback.
I bet. Now, what was the number one thing as you're going through this 8.5 years? Were you just literally like, holy guacamole, like I don't want to say the word, but like, oh my gosh, this is really bad? What was the number one thing? The number one thing out of the whole experience?
There was a key source, and I want to put a time frame on this. The bombing happened in 1995. I really didn't become interested in it until early 1999. And met Charles Key, who is a former state representative who headed up the Independent Investigation Committee, the Oklahoma Bombing Investigation Committee. I met him in June of 2001. 9/11 happens that September, and then we really went full force into the film when I moved to Oklahoma City in 2003. So to answer your question, there was a lot of things that came together, but one of the most powerful pieces of damning evidence was the actual blueprints of the building. And there was a confidential source with the GSA office out of Fort Worth. Fort Worth was in charge of that region. And this particular individual, it was his first big project back in 1990, I want to say this, 1976, they built the building. And it was his first big job. His last big job, ironically, was building the new federal building that replaced the Murrah building. That was it. And then he retired after that was done. So he saw a full circle in both of these buildings. But he gave me 8 pages of 62 pages of blueprints. And I'll never forget this. I met him down in Fort Worth. I was down there visiting my brother for Christmas. He called me Christmas Eve of 2003. And he says, I need you to meet me at an undisclosed location. Well, I can't say where we met, but he handed me 8 pages of the blueprints. I unrolled those pages when I got back to my brother's house. And I studied architecture and civil engineering at college. And as soon as I unrolled the floor plans of that building, I started, at the research at the time I did, up to that point, where the explosives were, what damage was done to the building. I says, my God. These blueprints just tell all. The damage couldn't have happened this way because there were support columns. There were, certain electrical closets that could have had access for the ordnance. And I started putting all of the pieces of the puzzle together. And also the after-action reports written by the Oklahoma City Police Department, which clearly showed that the damage pattern to the building could not have been caused by a one-point source, such as the truck bomb.
Yeah.
Then we have. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, so it was like it was 9/11 that really kicked it into gear. And interestingly enough, you're looking at blueprints.
Right, exactly.
And now 9/11, there's people that are very concerned about Building 7, and they are also searching for blueprints of that building, which apparently now those blueprints are in complete lockdown. Nobody can get to them.
Right.
So it's sort of a similar situation. Also, what happened after Oklahoma City, isn't that when they rolled out the USA Patriot Act?
Well, it was a reincarnation. It was more of, in fact, General Parton, who helped us, he was an expert consultant, former head of the Pentagon Armament Lab for 18 years. He said that the Patriot Act, we already had all the tenets and all of the doctrine in that act already on the books for many years.
Yeah.
And the Patriot Act just took more of a sinister and more overreaching approach to, the gun rights and buckling down on supposed right-wing militia, which turned out to be complete hogwash. If there was anything that the right-wing militia would have done, they would have guarded that building. They had enough respect for the government at the time. You don't be killing innocent people. So that whole narrative just got flipped on its head. And as a film crew, let me qualify this, guys. We had a lot of very good people, like I said, in all of the levels of law enforcement in the U.S. government help us. Retired FBI, retired CIA, a retired member of a foreign, organized crime that worked for the U.S. CIA. They came forward and told us what had happened, at least their bit of what they thought had happened. And so we don't want to paint a broad brush that the U.S. government is completely sinister, because there's the good part and the bad part. And unfortunately, it was the bad part. It's the yang and the yin, to use a better term, the balance. And it was the bad part that planned and committed and covered up this particular crime. And so as a film crew, we had no legal standing, number one. Number two, we weren't out to get anybody in trouble. We just wanted to correct, in our humble and our professional way, correct the record of this historic event so future generations could at least get a balanced view of what happened here. And hopefully, it'll help them judge if there's any future acts, which there were, false flag terrorism, to let them know what's going on and have something to at least, professional to balance on.
Okay, from the chat room, I have a question. It says, wasn't the investigation of the Whitewater, wasn't that housed there? And I believe more so it was the WACO incident that was, all the papers were housed there. And so there was a reason, to get rid of this building, right?
Well, as far as the WACO papers, I know that they had the that's in fact, Rachel, we had talked about that a few days ago when we were doing a test run on this, and I can go into that subject later, but we don't have any proof that the WACO papers were actually at the Murrah building. Now, as far as the Whitewater papers, there was some rumor, there was some conjecture. We did have a source within the I want to say the fire department, the Oklahoma City Fire Department, that found some documents that may have related to that, but we did not get any definitive proof that they were in there.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah,
good
so
to
that's
know.
why
Good to know.
we could not include that in the film unless we had to triple check that. So, but there was a lot of other. What we do know for sure, guys, is that there was a drug case, a federal drug case, ready to go to court on May 10 of that year, and that the contraband, the cash, and the actual drugs were actually stored in the DEA safe room on the 7th floor, and that was a multi-billion-dollar case. The Medellin drug cartel, and there was Juan Abrego. He was one of their informants and bagman that was actually brought into custody the year after the bombing. They finally caught him. That case never went to court. Everything was destroyed, and the subpoenas were dropped in federal court.
You said it was $1 billion?
Oh, yeah, we're talking international, billions of dollars, yeah. That could
And
have
these
shut
people
that
are,
pipeline down.
and these people are just walking around now?
There were 3 of them in Oklahoma City that we knew of that were still living free. They never were brought into custody.
What were they bringing in? Cocaine?
Oh, it was just a wide variety of substance it was bringing in. So, and I have that from a confidential source with the DEA that was actually on the 7th floor that morning. I sat down with her at a kitchen table and had a conversation for over 3 hours, and she told me what was in the safe room. She told me what was going on, and that they were entrusted by the U.S. prosecutor's office to keep that in safekeeping. The courthouse was literally across the street from the federal building, and that case never went to trial. So
that's interesting.
Yeah. Now,
so how does Timothy McVeigh fit into the whole scheme then? He just go ahead. Tell us about
what we found out is, and this is by way of his defense counsel, Stephen Jones. After Stephen Jones found out that we were going to be working on the film, he knew that we were going to take a very serious and very methodical and objective approach to this. And I had met with him in October of 2003, and at his office in Enid, Oklahoma. And we had a meeting for about 2.5 hours. And on my way out, he handed me the card of the curator of the law library down in the University of Texas in Austin. He's an alumni of that law school. And ironically, his first big case was the Whitewater hearing. So he jumped in head first, man. He earned his bones real quick. Or the Watergate hearings back in '72. Anyway, he gave me the card to the curator and says, if you need access to any of the boxes of our documents we obtained during the discovery process, give this gal a call. She'll give you a discount on the copies. You can't take anything out of there, but she'll help you facilitate photocopying. So wonderful job by Wendy Painting and Holland Van den Nieuwenhof, our co-producers and researchers. Wendy actually moved from her home in upstate New York down to Austin, I believe for the better part of 5 months, and was in that library for every day. She'd take maybe a day off a week. I went down there for 4 days and sat with her in there, and it was just amazing, the treasure trove of information. 141 boxes, legal document boxes, full of everything that the defense team put together to defend McVeigh. Let me, in a nutshell, he was working for the CIA for 2.5 years up to that point. How did we know? We saw his pay records. I mean, you can't deny that. We saw.
You actually saw like pay stubs.
Well,
what does it say? CIA.
I can't go into the details on that, but we did determine. That's okay. I did for a question. We did determine that he was actually an assassin and he was smuggling drugs. Another thing people don't know is that McVeigh was on General Schwarzkopf's security detail during the first Persian Gulf War.
He was the front door. Really?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, he was a 50 cal gunner. He was one of 2 50 caliber tank gunners. He could take you out 1,800 yards downrange. He was on that security detail, and he was so good that when he was in custody at the federal courthouse in Denver awaiting trial, the Army sent 2 medals of commendation to his attorney. Stephen Jones said, yeah, I received it and gave it to Tim McVeigh. The U.S. Army didn't want that to come out, but hey, it is what it is. So that definitely, that's another piece of the puzzle. It's like this guy was so good that yes, he was hired by the CIA, and he was an assassin. Now, he didn't assassinate top heads of state, not the folks that you hear about in the news every day. What he would do was he'd go 3, 4, 5 levels under them, do what he had to do to send the message to the top. If you're not in line, you don't go by our marching orders, this will probably happen to you and your family. That's all that needed to be done. He'd come home, He'd fly back on a jet, come home wherever he was, where home was for him. He had 8 different identities, by the way, 8 different driver's licenses. So you don't get that unless you're working for the U.S. government.
Yeah.
You know,
oh my gosh.
Maybe 1 or 2 licenses, but not 8.
I remember when this whole thing very first happened. My husband at the time, he was a Marine. He's like, when they were putting Timothy McVeigh to death, he said, he's not dead. I said, what do you mean he's not dead? He goes, no, he's a ghost. I go, what's that? I said, what's that? He goes, no, they don't just kill somebody that's that skilled. They make him disappear.
Yep.
And this is the convenient way to disappear is like, he goes to sleep for a little bit, and he goes probably next morning they wake him up and they put him on a plane or maybe give him a facelift or something.
Well,
I'm going to interject right here if I can, because wasn't one of the recent Donald Trump assassination attempts, carried out by somebody who was allegedly dead?
I don't know. I didn't catch.
I don't know about that one. Yeah, I don't know about that.
I'll have to do my research on that, because I'm almost positive that is the case. The guy that rode the elevator up and had a weapon without a serial number, and they took him back to police headquarters and let him go. They said, oh yeah, he's dead. Anyway, I'm sorry to.
Well, they could very well have been. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know about that one. That's a good one to research.
What we do know is that James Nichols, the brother of Terry Nichols, and I we had conversed and met by phone, and actually at the state trial of Terry Nichols, and let's see, it was in 2004. From March until June of 2004, James had been at the death chamber when Tim McVeigh was executed outside the death chamber in Terre Haute. And he said that there were 3 hearses that pulled out of the back of that facility to throw off the media. And he befriended Tim McVeigh's birth dad. Tim's parents were divorced for quite a while. He befriended Tim's dad, and they would not give Tim's dad his remains. They gave him an urn that allegedly had his ashes in it. Disrespectful. Just kicked him in the teeth. Says, no, we're not going to give you the body. By the way, here's an urn that, we're saying that has his ashes. There was no way to prove that he was dead.
Somebody's cat's in that.
Who knows?
In that urn.
So, and even one of our lead investigators, Craig Roberts, who did a wonderful job, not Paul Craig Roberts, W. Craig Roberts out of Tulsa. He was a professional sniper for the Marines. He assassinated, during the Vietnam War. And he said, yeah, this is the way the CIA works. He says, you do not recruit. That line will dry up to recruit for the CIA if you start killing off your assets. Nobody's going to want to work for you. Just common sense. So
we have another question in the room here is, what was the reason for blowing up the building? What did the CIA get out of it? What did they stand to gain? Is there any conjecture on what that might be?
Good question. And this is our answer would be that it was not supposed to blow up. It was only supposed to go up to the point of appearing that it was going to blow up, and then the FBI and the ATF were going to come in and swoop down and to remunerate themselves, to basically say, hey, you know what? We're not the stumblebutts we were at WACO. And it blew up in their face. There were a lot of concentric circles here because there was the vested interest in making sure that building came down because of the drug case. And there were 2 or 3 other federal cases that, and we may think that there was some peripheral information to show that the Whitewater documents were in there. We don't know for sure, but there was some interest to cover the Clintons back, and those papers would, by default, they weren't allowed to be stored in the federal building in Little Rock because it was the state of the sitting president. You had to go geographically to the closest federal building. In Oklahoma City, drew the short straw on that, but we don't know. We've never seen any of the remnants of the documents from the building.
Well, you started out this with you don't want to be glib, but it looked like a Wile E. Coyote type of bomb that went off, and that's what wakes so many people up. I mean, people saw the World Trade Centers coming down, and they said, no, buildings aren't going to fall down like that. Why didn't the top just tip over? And it's the same way with that bomb at Oklahoma City. There's no way that it would have done the amount of damage that it did. And I don't know where I heard this. It might be AJ, talking about eyewitnesses, seeing people walk, grabbing gray sticks of butter that they walked out of the Miro building with after the explosion.
Right. And I spoke with Jane Graham, actually, oddly enough, 8 days ago. We were talking about a book that Craig's going to be writing on the case, Craig Roberts, and she was the witness. We had arranged to have her on Alex's show a couple of years before the movie came out, and she was very solid. To this day, I could call her and she'll tell me the same story. Yeah, it was Andreas Strassmeyer that was down there.
And so that would indicate that, yes, they did plan on taking a big chunk of the building down, because, you know, otherwise why would you go through if you were just going to have the bomb sit out there and not explode it in the truck, you know, swoop down and, you know, be the heroes of the day, then why would you have the whole building wired, you know, to be taken out?
Well, here's another interesting twist, guys. About 2 or 3 years after our film came out, people were still coming forward. They bump into them at a 7-Eleven or at a basketball game at the university, or I'm out to dinner, you know, at Denny's or whatever. And they'll come up to me and said, "You're the one that made the movie." And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, can you, let's talk." So we meet a few days later. A retired, this is a medic for the Oklahoma County Sheriff's Department, sat down next to 2 guys that were working for the CIA at the crime scene about 4 hours after the bombing. And they could still smell the the explosive, the C4, and the after effects and the after odor of that. He's sitting down having a sandwich with these guys on the curb. They're all exhausted, wondering what the hell just happened. And these guys just blurted out and said, "Yeah, there was wire charges in the building, just matter of fact, plain as day." And we had another one that was actually, he was a reserve sheriff, walked in there 18 minutes after the explosion, looking for people immediately, and he saw no less than 23 columns. They had mercury switches and explosive devices strapped to the columns. And I said, "Do you remember?"
Can I
know.
stop?
This is. Go ahead.
Back to the original question from the chat board. What was the point? Like, yeah, what's the reason for this? I mean, if they just wanted to show like they weren't bumbling fools, well, this is kind of like, that's very, very like ridiculously childish. I mean, I don't.
Well, here's the thing. Let's separate the two things here. We're not saying that the CIA or the government, they set it up to go, but it wasn't supposed to go live. Let me make that perfectly clear. This was supposed to be a false flag operation. But you had other people that were walking basically in line with the CIA, going in there and planting the explosives without the CIA's knowledge.
Isn't this kind of reminiscent of the '93 World Trade Center bombing, where they said that it wasn't supposed to be live, but they gave the guy live explosives anyway, and then actually did set it off, you know, and the intent was to blow the building up so that it would tip over and knock over the other building or something like that.
Yeah, so. It's just amazing. In fact, let me tell you this. I went to the trial for Terry Nichols the first 10 days, opening arguments and then the evidence that was presented. And there was a security guard, his last name, ironically, last name of Nichols, a mechanic at the Regency apartment towers a block away. And he knew the security guard. Burns Security, oddly enough, McVeigh worked for Burns Security when he first got out of the Army, before he got in the CIA. It was a cover job up in upstate New York. This guy covered the beat of the post office, the federal building, the federal courthouse, the Federal Reserve Bank, and the Regency Towers. He walked those 5 buildings. He was hired by Burns Security, all within 8 blocks of each other. So whoever was casing out the building knew when he would be there. And he did the same route every night, never mixed it up. So they knew when he was going to be walking at the post office or the Federal Reserve Bank or the federal courthouse. And there was increments of at least an hour and a half that he'd be out of there. So they could have snuck in there. And what we did, and this is another, going back to the blueprints, Rachel, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be jumping around here, but
no, I'm just fascinated.
I looked at those where the electrical closets were on every floor, and it follows the same column. It's just common sense engineering. If you're going to run your plumbing, you're going to run your electrical, you do it down the same column. It's a lot easier for maintenance, a lot easier, you know, to put together, less material costs. And what we found out, just by the damage done to the second floor where the kids were killed in the nursery, that yes, those explosives were put between the drop ceiling and the concrete slab of the floor above. You have about 3 feet of space. God. And it's just, even General Parton said, yeah, you could put them in a rag bucket and hide it, just put rags on top of the bucket and just set it next to the column. It was so powerful. It literally took these columns, 4 to 6 feet of those columns, it turned them to chalk dust within about 2 seconds. It was gone.
So I'm still back to this, like, why?
I know. That's the ultimate question. We don't know, other than the fact that there was federal cases ready to go to court, And there were groups, the Honor Among Thieves, they were working together. They needed to have that building brought down. They, meaning the peripheral, there may have been some bad sides of the CIA that wanted to make this. They had to have this go live. There's a lot of people that are on the payroll. You know, I mean, they're paid well enough. They'll help you do whatever needs to be done. They'll turn they'll turn a blind eye and walk the other way. It was really sinister.
And that space that you're, that you're referencing where the explosives were placed, the only people that would see that would be the actual mechanical crew that would go in and work on wiring or plumbing or whatever. Exactly. I mean, a cleaning crew or the daily occupants of the office. So those charges could have been there for quite some time, and they could have been wiring it over a long period of time. This is something that, it could have, been in the planning stages for a very long time. So.
Yeah, and the security at that building was a level 2. It was supposed to be a level 7. And it was just, again, the GSA was cutting back on funds. We have at least 2 employees that told us they were able to get into the loading dock door where UPS and FedEx, everybody would drop off their stuff using their plastic ID cards to flip the bolt on the door in the back. It was so easy to get in that. A lot of the cameras in the building were not working. There were some. There was a bank that were on the outside, but some were not. And in fact, my ex-roommate, oddly enough, this is where the synchronicity comes together. He actually interviewed for a job that he saw the bank of cameras that were working fine, and that's where the FBI just flat out lied about it. That's where they confiscating the tapes. That's another, like I said, another topic for another interview.
Right.
We could go on and on and on and on.
And, another one of the really damning pieces, that I think is that, and I don't know if this is true or not. It might be another thing that I heard on Jones's show, but that all of the demolition material was hauled to one landfill, and that landfill is guarded. That still has a fence around it, and so that you can't get into. Nobody could go in and run tests on any of the materials from there.
Well, yeah, that's correct. Now let me expound on that.
Really?
Well, hold on. There was 4 different landfills. One of them happened to be leveled over, and there's a police training academy, I believe, for the Midwest City Police Department. Their parking lot is literally over one of those landfills. Now, that's another thing that my contact at GSA asked me. He looked at me and he says, I want to help you guys out any way I can. Just don't reveal my name. I'll give you whatever you need, whatever I can. But he says, why would the GSA, this is in December 2003 that I met with him. Why would they still charge us $6,800 for copies of a complete set of the blueprints for a building that had been buried in 4 different landfills at that time 8 years earlier, over 8.5 years before that? It makes no sense. They did not want those blueprints to come out. Luckily, we were able to get 8 pages. We scanned a couple of them. I took them to an architecture a graphics firm. They scanned it for us, and we were able to blend them into the movie and the graphics.
Another one of our chatters in the room there says that he is an electrician, and he says it's easy. All you have to do is have that tool belt on, and security and everything just walks you right in. They don't even care.
Sure, so. It's like having a UPS uniform on. You can get. You're right, and I respect what he's saying, because that's what we think could happen. Who's going to turn a suspicious eye to somebody that's there probably every day? All right, you'll have one of his buddies maybe you never see. He'll show up.
Yeah, and if they ask who you are, you can just say, well, Joe was sick today, so I'm his replacement, something like that.
Now, remember, we are talking about the CIA. They can go into the guise of, delivering donuts for Dunkin' Donuts, for Christ's sakes. They certainly can get in as electricians, so you're right. You made a very good point.
Well, and the guy at the Super Bowl that made it onto TV and said 9/11 was an inside job because he went to deliver some donuts, right? They walked him right through the gate.
Yeah, I know we're limited on time here, guys. I apologize, but we got about another 7 minutes, I guess, 8 minutes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, do you want to do you want one last thing to say about this whole thing? You want people to take away from this Oklahoma City thing, and also where people can see this film?
Yes, our website. Thank you for asking. And our website is freemindfilms.com. We have all 3 films. It's the Oklahoma City bombing, and then we went on to State of Mind, Psychology of Control, which Alex did an absolutely wonderful job of helping us promote in 2013. And then our third one, our latest, is called Shadow Ring, which is narrated by Kevin Sorbo, Hollywood actor. Done a wonderful job for us. Mary Ellen Moore, Rachel, you know her. She was the one that was instrumental in getting Kevin on board for that. So But anyway, you can look at all 3 films. We'd appreciate your patronage as opposed to downloading the free copies off of YouTube. At least the first 2 are on there, and it's like sweeping back the ocean. It's tough to keep those off of YouTube. But anyway, they're available on Vimeo.
They're so good.
Yeah.
That's why people just want to share the information. So you can't blame them, but it's true. People, you should buy it and support this effort. This is amazing.
We've got investors to pay back. We've got to monetize it. We're not making a ton of money. Anyway, the trailers are connected to our Vimeo channel, which has all of our work, including some of the music videos we've done. And there's some interesting, some of the pilot trailers and some of the music that we've had in the movie. So there's I'd say about 18 to 20 different files on the Vimeo channel. You can download the films. I believe they're going for $4.99, and that's just the way things are. We still have some of our DVDs available. They can contact me at chris.emery@freemindfilms.com. I can set up an order for that, or just go to the Vimeo channel off of the trailers. They're connected right to the Vimeo download file, and we'd appreciate your support.
Well, I have all 3 of your videos that I bought from the Power Hour when you were guests on there, and they're a great investment because you can watch them several times and still not absorb everything. And we've just been on just this first film, Oklahoma City, and Shadow Ring, and
Shadow Ring is out of control. That is like one of the best. It really is one of the best movies out there in this genre.
Yeah, we. By the way, I want everybody to know that there were 75 of us that worked on that Oklahoma City bombing case. I'm just one of the several spokespersons for it, so I don't want to take the credit, and I certainly wouldn't if asked to do so. But it was a life-changing experience, and we're still getting intel coming in. 5.5 years on, people are still contacting us.
Well, that's part of this whole thing that I kind of wanted to go into a little bit too. I mean, our show is called Shadow Citizen, and then your latest movie was called Shadow Ring, and so there is this. You fall, you tumble down the rabbit hole. You find one little thing, and you think, "Oh my God, the world's coming to the end!" And then it opens up into this huge underground tunnel system going into all these different directions, and it all seems to be connected. So. That's something I'd like to say for people is to, don't lose heart. I mean, sometimes it becomes overwhelming, but, I mean, all the guests that are in Shadow Ring, I mean, Aaron Dykes is pretty young, and yet he's just, in the amount of time that he's been in it, he's absorbed all this information. Now he's become another walking encyclopedia,
Oh yeah, we really have all utmost respect for Jack Blood, and I understand, Rachel, he helped with the music score on your show. Jack has been a longtime friend. I mean, everybody, most of those people I know personally, some I'd met for the first time. But they're just we're humbled to have them in the film. We certainly don't take that for granted. They're amazing in their own right. They have a skill set that is way beyond what I would be able to handle. So,
yeah, we're all big fans of Jack Blood here. We he's been off air for a while and he's doing his band thing, and we're happy for him. But he basically said that this election is a no-win situation because. If you point out anything about either candidate, the other side is going to come down on you like a ton of bricks, and and so that's what happens to the shadow citizens. All of a sudden, they find that they can't get work, and then and if you can't get work, you don't have the money, and it's just basically the whole system is set up off of this monetary
Rob, I
system.
empathize with you. That happened to me in Oklahoma City. I had 3 of my jobs threatened, and luckily I sat down with all of my bosses and I said, look, this is the film I'm working on. This may or may not happen, meaning some people may be making some phone calls, sending some emails, or making some visits. I just appreciate if you could back me up. And every one of them did. It was just amazing. But I saw those wheels rolling, and yes, there are unfortunately people that can't get gainful employment if they try to do what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
That's the reality of it all. Rachel, if I can interject here real quick, you made a very good point on the blueprints, and I know you have quite a story to tell about World Trade Center 7 and the blueprints.
Yeah.
And but that's another show, another time.
That's a different day. Yeah, no, this is excellent. I'm so glad you were able to show up. I know you have to head out. You got another thing you got to deal with. Yeah. But I'm so glad you came, and I appreciate it so much.
Well, guys, I never take these interviews for granted, and I said that on my post on Facebook last night. I've been doing this for, my God, since 2003, and every one of them I'm very humbled. For you to take the time to invite me, I will definitely do whatever I can, and I'd love to come back on whenever you need me.
We'd love to have you back on.
Yeah, we just we just scratched the surface here, and there's a lot more to I think we're going in a whole different direction yesterday during our or Monday, I guess, when we did the make sure that technology works. But
sure.
Yeah.
By the way,
no, we'll get that figured out.
I'm looking forward to hearing your other guests, Catherine Fitz and Sean Stone. My God, I'm humbled to be in their company. So.
I know, and yeah, what's his name? Ortel's going to be on.
And then, of course, James Perloff, I forgot to, I'm remiss without mentioning, he did an outstanding job. James is stellar he helped us so much on our third film. And, it's always a joy to talk to him and exchange stories. And we have a little bit of humor going between us. So he's wonderful. Very, very
he's just a cornucopia of information, that man. I don't know what his deal is, if he's got like he's like a encyclopedia. He really is.
So
there are a lot of people in this, in this movement that are that way. Jack Blood being one of them, and Alex Jones, of course. People have a hard time with Alex, after a while, but he has done so much for this movement that we have to give him credit for that. And
I heard Mary Ellen, a colleague, and I were talking this morning. She said to say hello, Rachel, and really.
Hi, Mary Ellen.
Show.
Hi.
And anyway, Alex evidently is going to open up a bureau in Washington D.C. And Jerome Corsi is going to be heading that up. Now that was public on his show. She said, he has 2.3 million listeners a day, so I'm certainly not letting the cat out of the bag. But I think that would be awesome for Jerome Corsi to head up his his bureau. And I wish all the best to the guys at InfoWars and the women, the men and women. I've got some good friends over there, and I have the utmost respect for what they're doing. So.
Yeah, you have to, give hats off to Alex, and maybe it's that gruff character that brings in people that just, they Rush Limbaugh isn't doing it for him anymore, and they see, they see Alex screaming at Pierce Morgan, and they go, oh, let's go find out who this guy is. So, So, however we get people to come in and just, it's the same way as Governor Ventura. I mean, I voted for him. I'm in Minnesota. I voted for him. I didn't think he would ever get it. But then, once he's in, I'm kind of going, oh my gosh, But now when he went into the conspiracy theories thing, it kind of made it okay to talk about conspiracy theories. And so now they have to come up with fake news, and that's not working for him. So.
No, exactly. Well, guys, thank you, and sorry I have to roll, but let's do this again sometime.
Yes, we will. Thank you so much, Chris.
Yes,
everybody, that
Chris.
was Chris Emery. Go check him out.
At Free Minds Films. Yep. Okay, thanks, Chris.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, Rachel.
So,
that
was good. I was so happy to have him on. That was excellent.
I was worried at the beginning there. I thought I thought it was all going to just fall apart. But somehow these things just work out. So
hold it together. I didn't want to interrupt him because I knew his time was limited. But when I was working at the defense contractor before 9/11 happened, it was very shortly before 9/11. They hauled out all of the highest ranking people in the corporation that I was working for and flew them over to the Oklahoma City memorial. And then all of a sudden, everybody came back with this renewed sense of purpose that they had to be ready for the next attack. And that, I always think about that. I was like, why are you guys going to Oklahoma? I remember walking to my boss's office going, why the heck are they sending you to Oklahoma? It's like this big deal. Like they were getting nice hotels and they were getting the treatment. I was like, what's going on?
Well,
the next thing you know, 9/11 happened literally like the next week, I believe.
And that's kind of the whole story about, Bush in the classroom full of children, and they just let him sit there for a while. And then when they finally got him on Air Force One, he's flying around the country for a while. And does he go back to Washington? Does he go to some military base? No, he flies to, I believe he, flew and met with Warren Buffett, of all people. So, and I'm going to have to...
You went directly to Warren Buffett?
Yeah,
oh, man.
And you hear all these crazy stories, and sometimes I get in trouble because I fall for a lot of it. But that's a lot of times it ends up being worse than what what you heard in the first place. It's kind of like
right.
This Peter Thiel thing. I thought, oh, this has got to be but he's actually the founder of PayPal and Republican financer on many levels. You know, all of a sudden he's getting into life extension technology. And what is life extension? They take blood transfusions from young people that are in their prime.
They take the plasma. Yeah, they take the plasma from the blood and dress it up and they stick it into old people.
And then the old people get a charge. They get renewed. So
supposedly, right? The company's name is Ambrosia, if anybody wants to look it up. It's called Ambrosia. This is Peter Thiel from PayPal.
Well, I hope they will figure out that they can't keep feeding us GMOs and spraying us with chemtrails if they want to keep doing that, unless they're going to find a healthy race of young people someplace that aren't exposed to all that stuff. So, but
hey, should we do the Tri-Color report?
Hey, we should. You want the intro music?
Yes, I love the intro music.
Okay, here comes the intro to Tri-Color report.
Shadow Citizen presents the Necktie Color Report. And now for this week's interpretation of the subliminal messaging in necktie color as shown in this week's photos distributed by the mainstream media.
And that's your cue, Rachel.
All right, right on. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the Shadow Citizen Tri-Color Report. This past week, we witnessed the explosive news of a travel ban on Friday. They always tend to do this stuff on Friday because of the news cycles. I loved when they even said that in the new X-Files. Even though the new X-Files episodes actually sucked, I like how they included the fun fact that this will probably happen on a Friday. Anyhow, Friday news release allows the messaging to percolate. It also gives the production teams of the news to get their feature stories together for Sunday night, which means most people will be able to process and talk about the story at the coffee machine in the break room on Monday morning. This has always been the scene with the news. Nowadays, with the alternative media and the internet, lead time is very, very short. The massaging of the message has moved to a new level. Specifically, the art of exploiting what is currently dubbed fake news and throwing that into the mix so that by Monday morning at the coffee machine, people are literally ready to cry about a 9-month travel ban. In order to get this desired response, you better believe that the outfits, specifically the ties, were carefully selected before these men stepped in front of a camera. In my very first tie color report a couple of weeks ago, I explained how I used to pick out ties for important people, and that included some congressmen, before they went on camera. I also explained that in that very first tie color report, that the color of the tie was important because it helped convey a psychological, which is how you emotionally feel, and physiological, which is how your body physically reacts, marker to the content of the message. Tie color can do that in a nanosecond. Since a single image becomes almost like a stained glass window at a cathedral, if you think about it, those people back then at the cathedrals, they couldn't read, and the message had to get through loud and clear. Now, people, instead of seeing an image made of richly colored glass illuminated by sunlight, they see it in high definition in more colors than an eye can process on a plasma screen for less than half a second. And by Wednesday, you have everyone from Ellen DeGeneres to the New York Times to Joe the blogger to the Telegraph in the UK critiquing the thing and helping you form your opinions. So when this travel ban hit the scene, you better believe that the ties were already picked out. So let's review. On Friday, when President Trump signed the travel ban in the 7 Muslim majority countries that the Obama administration had already deemed a threat for 90 days and suspending all refugee admission for 120 days, which incidentally did not include a ban on people with green cards, he was wearing, as expected, a red power tie. FYI, the guidance sent to the airlines on Friday night, obtained by CNN, said clearly, lawful permit residents are not included and may continue to travel to the USA. The order immediately prompted people in London to start marching around in the streets demanding that President Trump not be allowed to travel to the UK. It also kicked off a number of airport protests where people, still high from their experience at the Women's March, began ardently protesting. The airport protest action then prompted the state and local elected officials to comment not only on the travel ban, but on Donald Trump himself and an assortment of tangentially related issues. One of the more significant declarations of displeasure was by New York Senator Chuck Schumer, who was one of the featured speakers at Donald Trump's inauguration. He came forth with a young girl wearing a headscarf and a younger boy and proclaimed with real tears in his eyes that the ban was mean-spirited. He was wearing a great combination of a bluish-greenish, faintly patterned tie on a very light blue shirt. This was an excellent choice, seeing as anything Muslim can be associated with the color green, and anything Democrat can be associated with the color blue. This was a great photo op with the children in the color scheme. Of course, Senator Schumer supported a travel ban under the previous administration, so take that for what you will. Interestingly, this week I saw a communication that the Democratic Party would be shifting its messaging from predominantly African Americans to the American Muslim community. Also this week, I noticed Hawaiian Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, who is a Hindu with military police background and who had served in Iraq, appearing on CNN in a solid red dress in front of a purple background. I talked to you last week about purple. The red made sense considering that she was talking about the horrors of war and the situation in Syria. She was calling out what she witnessed while on her fact-finding mission to the country, which was approved by the House Ethics Committee and sponsored by Arab American Community Center for Economic and Social Services. She found out that there were, in fact, no quote-unquote moderate rebels in Syria, and she called for the U.S. to stop supporting the carnage. It is my conclusion from that brief CNN appearance that Tulsi Gabbard is going to run for president. I'm making this statement based on the fact that she's a woman with military history wearing red in front of an illuminated purple. She very well could face off with Donald Trump at the next election and win. I'll keep you posted on further developments next week in my Shadow Citizen Tie Color Report.
This stuff is really all fascinating to me, and I will reflect what Keith Peace has said in the chat room. Eyes are the windows of the soul, and if you control the audience, you control the world. So I'm a little bit colorblind. Maybe that.
Oh, well, there you go. See, you're going to be immune to all this stuff. But there's some people that are really, really. I am one of these people. I went to art school, and literally, if the color on a wall is different, like if I go into, let's say, my mother's house and she's had the house painted a new tone of white, because my mom's really into white, but there's always these different tones of white. It will literally make me feel sick to my stomach. If it's not the right color. So I'm highly attuned to this color thing, and that's why it's so fascinating to me.
Yeah, it is to me too. I'm going to do a little bit more reflecting on our chat since we have some great listeners. So yeah, Jared, said that Bush was flown to Offutt Air Force Base in Omaha. That's where Buffett lives. So, and then let's see what else we have here. Courage Sower put in here that in ancient Greek myth, ambrosia, this new company,
right,
is sometimes the food or drink of the Greek gods, often depicted as conferring longevity or immortality upon whoever consumes it. So thanks, guys.
That's right. That's right. Because the only way I know ambrosia is from like the 1970s when we used to bring it to Thanksgiving, and it was like shredded coconut mixed in with like mini marshmallows mixed in with like, I think it was those mandarin oranges, and you mixed it up. It was like I forget what the actual, it wasn't yogurt, obviously, at that time. It might have been whipped cream. I don't know. And you mixed it all together. It was called ambrosia. And me and my sister loved it.
It was probably Cool Whip, if you remember.
Cool Whip. Yeah, there you go, right there. Either that or fluff, marshmallow fluff. But I think it was Cool Whip.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, who's our guest next week? You want to introduce that?
No, you could go ahead.
It's Sean Stone.
Oliver Stone's son.
Son, right?
Yeah.
And so that'll be
John Stone.
Great show. And I will get this show cleaned up a little bit. We got off to a bad start, so I will patch together whatever we can, and we'll put that up on our archives, so you'll be able to find that at shadowcitizen.online. So remember, it's online, not .com. And yeah, we're going to continue rolling and hopefully get a little bit better each week. And thanks to Chris Emery for joining us for this show. That was an awesome interview. We want to have you back.
And our audience that tunes in and puts up with all this, you guys are the best. You're the best. And share this show once it comes down. And I am going to convert them to podcasts. That's my job. His job is to get it on this radio Confluence and the Mixler. And my job is to turn it into podcasts once it hits the archives. So I promise you the archives are going to turn into podcasts.
Okay, and we're going to go out with a little bit of Rage Against the Machine, and I think we've got No Shelter here. So thanks, everybody, for listening. See you next Wednesday, and take care.
Bye, everyone.